Stop scrolling, because what I'm about to tell you is not just a story. It's a pattern that destroys families in silence. My name is Ava Collins, and I'm 29 years old. And twice in my life, my own parents disowned me. The first time I was 17. The second time, I was finally ready for it. But let me take you back. Because nothing starts at the breaking point. It starts long before that. I grew up in a house where obedience was called respect. And silence was called good behavior. If I agreed, I was a good daughter. If I questioned, I was difficult. If I refused, I was a problem. And in my family, problems were removed. Not solved, removed. At 17, I didn't understand that yet. I still believed parents protected you. That family meant safety. That love meant choice. I was wrong. The day everything changed started like an ordinary evening. Dinner was already on the table. Nothing unusual. No warning signs. No tension I could name. My mother asked me to sit down calmly. My father didn't look at me. That was the first sign something was wrong. Then my mother spoke. Her voice was soft. Too soft. "Ava," she said, "we found someone for you." I remember blinking. I thought she meant a tutor. Or college guidance. Something normal. But then she said the age. 43. I laughed first. Because I thought it was a joke. But no one laughed back. That silence changed everything. My father finally looked at me. And his expression was already decided. Before I even spoke. "This is a good match," he said. Not a suggestion. A conclusion. I remember my throat going dry. I asked the only question I could think of. "Do I know him?" My mother shook her head. "He is respectable," she said. Respectable. Not kind. Not compatible. Not loving. Just respectable. That word was supposed to end the conversation. But something inside me shifted. I asked again. "What if I don't want this?" The room went quiet. Not normal quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before punishment. My mother sighed like I was exhausting her. "You will understand later," she said. My father added, "This is for your future." But I was already understanding something else. My future was not being discussed. It was being decided. And I wasn't included in the decision. That night, I refused. Quietly at first. Politely. Carefully. But refusal in my home was not accepted. It was corrected. My mother's tone changed. My father's patience disappeared. "You are being ungrateful," my mother said. "You are embarrassing us," my father added. Then came the sentence I would never forget. "You are bringing shame to this family." As if my life belonged to their reputation. As if my body was a family asset. As if my future was a negotiation. I said no again. This time firmer. And that was it. That was the moment everything collapsed. My father stood up. Slowly. "You will either agree," he said, "or you will leave this house." I remember looking at him for a long moment. Waiting for softness. Waiting for hesitation. Waiting for love. There was none. So I made a choice I didn't fully understand at 17. "I won't do it," I said. And I meant it. The silence after that was heavier than shouting. My mother didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't negotiate. She just nodded. Like she had already expected this outcome. Then she said something that changed my life. "Pack your things."
No emotion. No hesitation. No regret.
Just removal. I was kicked out that night. At 17. With a backpack. And no understanding of what I had just lost. No family member called me back. No apology followed. No explanation softened the decision. Just silence. I slept that night at a bus station. Cold. Confused. Still believing they would come back for me in the morning. They didn't. And that's when survival started. Not dramatic survival. Not movie survival. Real survival. I worked 2 jobs. A cafe in the morning. A bookstore at night. I learned how to eat cheaply. How to sleep lightly. How to disappear in plain sight. And I studied whenever I could. Because education was the only door that hadn't been locked yet. Community college became my escape route. Not because I was ambitious, but because I had nowhere else to go. Slowly, I rebuilt myself.
Piece by piece.
Without permission. Without approval. Without applause. And something unexpected happened. I started meeting women like me. Women who were also told they had no choice. Women who were also arranged into silence. Women who were never asked what they wanted. And I realized something painful. My story wasn't rare. It was repeated. Over and over. In different homes. Different names. Same control. So, I changed direction. I stopped just surviving. I started helping. At first it was small. Translating documents. Making calls. Sitting with women during legal appointments. Then it became structured. Then organized. Then a full support network. By my mid-20s, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something. A system that helped women leave coercive situations safely. And for the first time in my life, I felt like my existence had purpose beyond obedience. But I never told my family. Not because I feared them, but because I didn't need their version of me anymore. And that silence grew into something powerful. Because while I was building a life, they were building a story. And in their story, I was lost. Or broken. Or worse,
Gone.
but the truth was something they couldn't see. I was becoming someone they could no longer control. Years passed, and I stopped counting how many. Because healing doesn't happen in dates. It happens in distance. Then one evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello. A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in over a decade. My mother. And, in that moment, the past didn't knock. It walked straight back in. The silence on the call lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like the past opening a door I had already locked years ago. Hello, Ava, my mother said again. Same tone. Same control. As if nothing had changed in 12 years. I didn't respond immediately. Because I needed to be sure I wasn't reacting from memory. Not from fear. Not from guilt. From reality. What do you want? I finally asked. A small pause. Then she spoke carefully. We need your help. That sentence alone told me everything. Not, we miss you. Not, we were wrong. Not even, how are you? Just need. Because in my family, I was never a daughter. I was a function. What kind of help? I asked quietly. Her voice softened slightly. Almost rehearsed. It's about your sister. My chest tightened immediately. Because I already knew. Even before she said it. She's becoming difficult, my mother continued. Difficult. That word again. Used when obedience disappears. She's refusing a proposal, she added. I closed my eyes. Just for a second. Because history doesn't repeat randomly. It repeats when nothing changes. Who? I asked. Even though I already knew the answer. My mother hesitated. Then said it. The same family you refused. My stomach dropped. Not because I was surprised, but because I was right. 43 years old. Still waiting. Still approved. Still acceptable in their system. And my sister, 17. Just like I was. I exhaled slowly. And something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not panic.
Clarity.
You want me to convince her, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes, my mother replied quickly. Like it was obvious. I stayed silent. Because I wanted her to hear how unreasonable that sounded. Then she added. You're the only one who understands both sides. Both sides. As if there were two valid perspectives. One of control. One of survival. There are no sides here, I said calmly. This is not negotiation. My mother's tone hardened slightly. Ava, don't make this difficult. That sentence used to work on me. Years ago, it shut me down instantly. Now it did nothing. I won't convince her, I said. Silence.
Sharp.
Immediate. Then my mother's voice changed. Colder. If you refuse, you are not part of this family. I almost smiled, because I had heard that before. At 17, it destroyed me. At 29, it felt like release. I understand, I said. And I meant it differently than she expected. Then I hung up. No shaking hands.
No tears. No breakdown.
Just silence. But this time, the silence belonged to me. 3 days later, she called again. Angrier. Less patient. More desperate. You are interfering in things that don't concern you, she said. I replied calmly. She is 17. She is my daughter, she insisted.
No.
That's where she was wrong. She is a child, I corrected. And that's when something in her tone cracked slightly. We raised you better than this, she said. That sentence again. As if control was education. As if obedience was success. You raised me to leave, I said softly. Silence. Because that wasn't part of their story. Then I did something I hadn't done before. I stopped explaining and started acting. I contacted a legal advisor I had worked with for years. I contacted a women's protection organization. And I contacted someone who specialized in forced marriage prevention cases. Not emotionally.
Strategically.
Because I had learned something important. Families like mine don't respond to emotion. They respond to consequences. 2 weeks later, I flew back home. The house looked unchanged. Same gate.
Same garden.
Same controlled silence inside. But I wasn't the same girl who left. I walked in, and everything shifted immediately. My mother saw me first. A forced smile appeared on her face. You came, she said. For her, I replied. My sister was sitting in the living room, 17 years old, just like me once. But her eyes were different, not unaware, aware. That changed everything. My father entered holding documents. It's already being finalized, he said firmly. I looked at him, calmly. No, I said. One word. The room froze. My mother laughed nervously. You don't get to decide this anymore, Ava. I nodded slowly. You're right, I said, then paused. I already decided something else. I placed a folder on the table. Inside were legal documents, reports, guidelines, and documented protections against coerced marriage involving minors. My mother's expression changed instantly. You wouldn't, she whispered. I met her eyes.
Calm. Steady.
I already did. Silence.
Thick.
Heavy.
Real.
My father stepped forward. This is family matter, he snapped. No, I said firmly. This is a human rights matter. That word landed differently, because it wasn't emotional anymore. It was structural. My sister spoke quietly for the first time. I don't want it, she said. That was it. The truth.
Simple.
Undeniable. And suddenly, everything in the room lost power. Because control only works when silence agrees with it. And now, silence was broken. Weeks passed after that. Not easy. Not clean. But necessary. There were arguments. Phone calls.
Threats.
Relatives interfering. But I stayed consistent.
Calm.
Unmoving. And slowly, the pressure broke. Legally. Quietly.
Permanently.
The engagement collapsed.
No announcement. No ceremony.
Just disappearance. My sister left with me. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Just quietly choosing a different life. In the car, she finally spoke. I thought I had no choice, she said. I looked at her.
Softly.
I know, I replied. I did too. And for the first time, that cycle ended in motion. Not silence. Not fear. But decision. Months later, she started college in a different city. Building something new. Something hers. And me? I went back to the work I had been doing all along. Helping women recognize that obedience is not safety. And silence is not love. My parents still tried to reach out occasionally. But something had changed permanently. The story they once controlled no longer worked. Because I was no longer inside it. And that is what they never understood. You can disown a person, but you cannot undo the truth they carry forward. And this time, I was ready for it all. Not as a daughter trying to be accepted, but as a woman who no longer needed permission to exist.